So the next part that we are going to discuss after discussing how you listen events within the browser and also using the three techniques that we have discussed incorporating these actions. The next one is we are going to focus on another particular application of JavaScript which we call validating when you want to especially in forms. For example, in this particular case, we can look at how we can validate different uh, form elements. Now, for example, possible things that you can do with the JavaScript. You can check the length of the information. Sometimes this matters. And exact match of type information, you can make it different types. Type some information and you can check whether that is matched. And then you can check some patterns in the data. Now, for example, when checking whether what user input is a email or not. So one way of detecting is you can use at within the emails, isn't it? So we can just see, we can check whether that at symbol is there whenever you have an email. And the last one, for example, when we have radio buttons or check boxes, whether that is selected or not, that you have to make a choice. So that could be make it compulsory, for example, especially validation. If it's a compulsory check, you might have seen like when you try to send it, you get a message saying that, okay, you have not filled particular data item. So this is the place where you can see in form validation. Right. Okay. So here is JavaScript command for checking text boxes, especially whether the checkbox is emptiness. So we can say, for example, when you are creating a text box, we say use input type text. And then, okay, one attribute that we can use is on blur. When you say on blur, that means that you are going to actually get the focus here. So that means element loses the focus. So when you're going out from the text box, that it should, execute the validate name. And the function is, this is the validate name is a function. And here is the code for the validation. So function validate name. So couple of things that we need to understand. For example, you have to get this, the whatever the data within this input docs. So the method that we are going to use is document.getElementById. So this is a method that you can use to get an element based on the ID you have provided. So in this particular case, we have name. So we will say, okay, document.getItem_by_ID, we say name. And then, there's a value. So that value, you can use dot value. And then what this means is we check the length. If the length is less than 1, okay, so then we know that there's a issue. So, okay, so this will say that, okay, field cannot be empty, right? So this is a simple text box check. Right, now let's create a small form and then try to, put this. So let's open up a text file and create HTML with, let's say, a text box, and then just implement this, right? And see whether you will get the message. So I'm going to open up E1. Okay, I will share. And then this time, let me share my screen. So you can try along. I'm trying to show you, but you can start. You don't have to until I discuss this. So far, we have done a couple of things. Okay, actually, you can use the form that we have developed early. If you remember that we created a form. And let me share you the code in case if you do not have this. Right. So let me share both of this. I think we have done this in the session. Right. Let me share now the screen. So in this particular case, okay, these are the, okay, so you can see now. Right. So your left-hand side, we have a form, which we have created in previous example. And here is what I have. Right now, if you go to this name, so this is the place where I have typed. So let me save this as I said, this is form exercises version 1. Let me say form exercises version 2, because that I'm going to keep. And v2, and I will say, okay, JS validation dot html. So I saved like this. So now that we have created this, now what I could do is we can go back and just implement. The right now, when I just type without anything, if you go to the next, it'll go, right? Without any issue, it'll go. Let me open up a modified version. So here is the new document, right? Now I'm going to incorporate the change. The change is, what we are going to do is after the input ID, we will say on blur, and then we put up a function name. So in our case also, so we can have ID. In this time, I said customer name. I'm going to keep it as it is. I don't want to, name this, but I can have an ID, because that will be easier based on the ID. So I'm going to say ID, and I will put it as a name, right? So I will say ID equals name, right? That's an additional item that I have put. And then I will say on blur, and I will say, okay, validate name, same thing I have applied. So you can see what I did here is I can copy paste this part, so that, right, what I did is, okay, I have added like this. So the addition that I put up ID, so that I can directly access that particular ID. Now the next thing that I have to do is I have to write a command for this. So after the body, maybe I can say, okay, I can create style, and then we can put up this JavaScript, function. So what I could do, let me go through this. So I'm going to type So I'm going to create a script. And I will end with /script. Just before the body, I will put it. Just before the body, I will put it. Right now, I'm going to create the functionality. The function that I want to create, I'm going to use right here is the functionality I have to type. So I'm going to say, okay, function validate name, right? Here is the function that I'm going to use. And simply, first I will just say alert it, alert, let's say document. I will explain what I'm doing. Document dot get element by ID. I will say name dot value. Whatever we enter should be displayed, right? So let me save this file, save. So let me go back to my script. Here is what I have. Let me refresh it. Okay. So let me put Sampath and then let's try to go to address. Okay, you can see now it shows me Sampath alert, right? Okay. So now what we want to do is, okay, I have to check the length, right? So I can go back again my code. So value dot length, I will put dot length, right? Let me save, file save. Let me refresh. Let me refresh. Okay, let me type Sampath. Okay, when I go try to go to the next line, it says okay 7. So which means we calculate the length of the input. So we will say here we have 7 characters. So now I think you should understand what happens here. So we are going to make a selection. So we say if we say documented get element length. So I will say okay document dot get element by name dot length. If it is less than 1, okay, what we want to do is we want to alert and say that okay, we say the field cannot be empty, right? Okay, so I think we are good to go, right? Let me save it, file save. Now let's go back to okay. So right now I'm going to refresh it. So let me say Sampath, nothing will happen. You enter something, but let's say I'm going to remove anything. And if I try to go to the next line, okay, it says the field cannot be empty. So you see how the validation works, right? So let me share the code that I have typed under the script. Just before the end of body, I put up this message so that, okay, now it will check. If you try to, try to go to the next field without filling the form, then now you are getting a error message. You are kind of force a user to enter something. Okay. So the next one, let's look at uh, entered value for a particular value. Let's say you are expecting some value for a text box and you check whether that value is equal, right? So in this particular case, you can see JavaScript command is again for input type text ID name. And let's say on blur check value. So we are providing a different function with this type. And within that, what we are trying to do is we will see whether what is entered is what is expected, right? So I'm going to demonstrate that. Okay, let's say I'm waiting, I'm expecting whoever type, person should type my name, and I'm going to check whether it's, equal to that, right? So I will go back to the same, let's say in this one, and then let me use, okay, the code. Okay, this is what I have, right? Okay, here is what we have. So let's say this time I'm going to use, let's say, address. I'm going to change something else because I'm going to keep everything in the same place. Let's say address, or maybe we can include something called city. And let's say I'm expecting the city should be Candy. So let me add one field here. So I'm going to go back where we have put the address. Okay, so this is the place. So after address, let me put, let's say city. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a city, and then the name will put it as city. And then I will make a ID is city so that I can refer that as city. Right. So that's simply what I did so far. Right now, if you refresh now, you should see there one more field is added. But let's say I expect city to be Candy. So this is the scenario that I'm trying to have. So now what I'm going to do is I will check on blur like earlier. So here I'm going to add, let's say, on blur. Okay, I will say, okay, check value. So this is the functionality that I'm going to execute. So let me save it. So let me copy paste what I did. I created the city, right, within my form. And then on blur means when you lost focus, you are going from that particular text box to the other place. We will execute check value functionality. Right, now let's work on the check value functionality. So what we are trying to do here is we will go down into the script. Now this is the first function. So let me create another function. So I'm going to say function check value. So this time I'm going to check. Okay. The first one that we want to check is whatever the value is there, right? So, so I will put like this. So I will have if, and I'm going to get the document dot get element by ID, and then I'm going to get the city dot value. Okay, now I'm going to check whether this is equal to Candy, right? If that is the case, we can say alert, the entered value is okay. Right, now let me save this. So the right now is I'm actually going to check the value. If it is Candy, it says okay. Right, now let me open up my, so here is my code. Now let me say, I will say refresh it, right? Now let me say candy. And if I try to lose focus, it says the entered value is okay, right? But what about if you type capital key? If you're trying to go there, okay, now it doesn't say this. The reason is now what we matched here is we are trying to check this candy, everything is lowercase letters. So you better convert this to a lowercase, whatever user inputs to check, because what we are interested in is the value, right? So we will first, what you should do is we need to convert into lowercase, right? And then we will check for this. So let me save it again. Now I'll go back to the file. Let me refresh. Now let me type K with capital. So value dot to lowercase, and it should equal to candy, right? So let me save it. And let's go back to the original. Let me refresh it. Let me type candy. Okay, candy. Let me check. Okay, so semicolon, is it a semicolon? No. So there's something small mistake. Let me check. So the right now document, if document dot get element by ID, we set value to lowercase. And it was working early, right? File save. Let me refresh it. Candy. Okay, now it's working. But this one, I'm checking the documentation. So it should be dot to lowercase. Okay, so I actually missed one thing here. Let me use that, the method. So I will put open and close bracket and let me save, but it was working earlier, right? Okay. Let me refresh. That was the problem. So I'm going to say can be. Yes. Sorry about that. So I missed the brackets here. So that's the error we got. So let me copy paste now. Thanks, Sekhan actually already informed that error. So that was my mistakes. Thanks, Sekani, for pointing it out. Right. If you finish up to this point, just let me know that you have finished by raising your hands, and we'll move to the next one. So as the next one, let's look at how to validate an email address. Of course, you know that in email, there's a particular format that you can look for, exact format using, a pattern of, email. But the simple check would be like when somebody is typing an email address, we can check whether at symbol is there. So simply what you could do is you can actually check within the document whether the email, the address the user enters, which contains the at symbol. And this is exactly what I'm going to explain. So if I go back to my home, right? So we have an email. So let's go to the code. Right now, this is what I have. And then let's modify this. So in this particular case, I will go to, right? I'll go to email. Okay, one thing is I will include ID. And then I will say this is email, right? And then when you say on blur, we have to write down particular functionality. So on blur, okay, I will say, okay, validate email, right? So that's what I'm going to use. So let me copy paste the code for you. So here is the code that I have done, validate email. And now I'm going to type this code here. The right now we are going to check function validate email. Okay. And here is what we want to do. Right. Now, first of all, we should know how to, access and see whether the at symbol is there. So I will first show you like use of alert to get the element. We can now get the element by ID, in this case, email, right? And then I will say value. So if I do this, you know what will happen when I save it. And let's say ABC at abc.com. And if you try to move it there, okay, let me validate email, document.get element by ID, email dot value. So let me save it. Save, let me refresh it first. Okay, yeah, that was a mistake. abc at abc.com. And let's focus. Okay, now it shows you the message. Now what we want to do is we now wants to see whether there's at symbol, right? Now to do that, first of all, I think you better convert into lowercase. Make sure that sometimes when you're using, so I can use that to lowercase, right? That's one thing. The next one is you are trying to find out where the at symbol is. So there's a method called index of. So we can say index of. And then we can say, okay, what is the index of at symbol? So let me save this and let me show you the outcome. Right now, I'm going to refresh it. Let me type abc at abc.com. And if you lose focus again, abc at abc.com. Right, it's not working. Let me check again. We have Okay, I missed one of the brackets, right? Okay, I missed one bracket. Yes. So let me check this file save. So let me refresh it. ABC at abc.com. Okay, so it says where this at symbol is. The right now the outcome we get as 3. So 3 means index start with 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, and it tells us that the value at symbol is in the index position of 3. You got my point, right? So that means if the value is not there, then we get the different value. So let me check that. Now let's remove this, right? And let's try to focus. Okay, now it says -1. So if the value is not there, we are getting -1. So the check should be, we can check whether this is, the index is -1, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what we could do is, right, let's take if we will say document.get element by id value to lowercase index of this. If it is equal to -1, now we know that it's not an value. So we can type, right? So what we could do is we can type, okay, we'll say alert. This is invalid email address, right? So in this particular case, so when I save it, and let me check this, let me refresh, right? So let me put abc at abc.com, and ideally we should not get any error. But if I say, if I remove at, and if I try to go, now we get invalid email address. Okay, so let me share the function that I have created for validation. Right? So the trick that we have used, we get the particular element by the ID email, convert into lowercase, and we check where the at symbol is. And ideally it should give you some index value, but if it is -1, that means that at symbol is not there, which indicates that it is a invalid email address. So in this example, I'm going to check on a particular checkbox. In this particular case, we have a checkbox and we have included ID as option 1, right? And then on blur, we want to execute validate checkbox. So within the on blur, what we did, so in this particular case, validate checkbox, we are getting whether the option 1 is checked or not, right? So let's put in this way. So the right now, this is what we have. Let me save it. Let me refresh it. Right now we are here. And if you focus, right? So we have validate checkbox. Yeah, no, without true or false, what I'm trying to do, Prasanga, is just print it whether it's a true or false. The right now, let me refresh. Yeah, something wrong in my code. Let me check alert document.get element by ID. I said option. Okay, spelling mistake. Option. Let me refresh again. Okay, now it says false. Let me click it. Okay, now it says true. You see the point. So when you click it, now it will indicate that it's a true, right? Now in validation, what we want to check is we want to check whether this is valid, right? So what we could do is, okay, we can have if. So now we can check whether this is false. If that is the case, we can say, okay, alert. Check box is not selected. Right. So this is what I have tried. So let me refresh again. Okay, now it says checkbox is not selected. Right. So depend on what you want to do, you can write the body of the function. So let me share my code, which what I did is basically we looked at whether that particular option is checked or not. Right. I think we can do like this for other things as well. I think the basics is enough. You can check the documentation in case if you are interested in implementing this for other elements in a form. Right. If you finish up to this point, please indicate. Otherwise, we'll switch to the next part. So what we have done so far, we check we look at how forms are validated. We look at simple text box, checking text boxes, where emptiness, where we looked at whether you have particular value. The text box at the same time, you check whether this email is a valid email, and now we check the check boxes. So similarly, you can check others as well, which I'm not going to discuss, but I think you got the basics down here. So the next part that I would like to discuss then is use of what we call DOM tree. Now that means, DOM tree means when we say we can manipulate a content in a document using what we call DOM, which is stand for Document Object Model. So in the next part, we can actually use, right? We can use the content of a document like HTML, but if you think about the DOM, you can use any what we call the XML languages, right? So we can say that the DOM is the programming interface for HTML and XML pages, and we can use it to structure of the document, right? And we have some methods to interact with the elements as well. Now, let's move on to that part. So accessing the content in the element is very, very important. And that's the flexibility we will get with JavaScript as well. So as you can see here, left-hand side, we have a HTML document. And right-hand side, you will have the document object model of this document, right? So as you can see within HTML, we have two parts, head and body. And if you look at what is inside head, we have title and meta. Similarly, within the body, you can find div. The first div, within the first div, you can have H1, paragraph, and within the paragraph, you have anchor as well. Similarly, if you look at the next division, is simply you have a paragraph. So this is what we known as node tree. And for a given HTML document, you should understand how to come up with this node read. Now, to understand a particular usage of DOM is this. With this example, you see you have a paragraph. And within the paragraph, we have a text called paragraph text with a link within that. So what you can do here, so when you look at the document object model or DOM, you have element nodes, you have attribute nodes, and you have text nodes. Now, P and A are we known as element nodes. Paragraph and anchor, they are element nodes. Then if you take href, it's attribute node. And what is in green, they are text nodes. So you can draw, right, the document object model for whole in module level, or you can focus on one particular, command, right? Try to understand how this will work. Now, when you want to access these DOM nodes, we call it, we can use a way to access or way to go through in this structure, right? So this is very, very important. How do you get this? Now, for example, let's say you have a page. We normally call it a document. And you can check whatever the value within the document. And if you have an element called, right, you have an ID beginner, and then you can find the value inside. This is called inner HTML. So you can use it that fashion to access it. So now that we have learned that you can actually, any document, you can find a node tree like this. Now let's look at how we can access each of these nodes, right? So the DOM, as we discussed earlier, it'll identify the page itself, and then it'll have properties. Now, for example, I said, now when you say document page, we say document, and let's try to find the element beginner, and then let's try to find what is within that element, right? And we are going to save it into what we call a variable foo. Right, now let's try to do this and see to understand what happens here. So I'm going to go back to my document. So here is what we have, right? And then let's look at some element. So you have to have some ID element in this particular case. And then whatever you provide in the ID, you are going to get that. So in this case, we said beginner, right? So let me see, right? So I'm going to say, okay, H3. So let me try this. ID, I will say H3. Let me save it. I'm trying to now see what is inside this element, right? So what I'm going to do is I will go down, right? Under the script, I will type a very small command. I will create a variable called foo, and I'm going to get the document, that means a page, get element by ID, and then H3 is what we are going to do, and then we'll say inner HTML. So within this, what are we going to have? So let's alert it. right? Now let's see whether this is working. So I will go here and then let me get, okay, this is what I have right now. So let me refresh it. Right now it's undefined. What the value within this H3. So we have put an ID, right? Prasang asks me about the H3. So I put H3, right? So what I'm going to do is document.get item by ID H3. And I'm trying to get the HTML. So let me check. Okay, let me check what the mistake I have done. Right, what I want to do is I'm going to access the element which is H3. So ID, we have to say get element ID. Let me check, double check with the, okay, this is okay, ID H3, that is their file save. Right, and then I'll go back to the script. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, document.get element3 in HTML. So maybe, yeah, I will comment this out. Let me put document get element by ID HTML. Okay, maybe the semicolon, do you think? No, not that, right? We got the semicolon, but what we got is undefined. What expect is what should be inside this H3. That's what I'm trying to access it.
Doctor, excuse me, there is a spelling mistake in HTML. It's T is X.
Yes. That is exactly. So I was wondering, like, thanks for pointing out. Right. Okay. Now you got it. Thanks for helping me out to make this. So guys, okay. Now in HTML, what we actually did is within the H3, you see, now we have, if you go back to this one, you can see what we have is design your dream pizza. And that is exactly what I want to access it, right? And you will see how I did it is just by going through the DOM. In this particular case, we say, okay, you get the element by H3, and inner HTML will give you the content within the element, which is very useful, right? So this time in HTML, we will see what is inside H3. Right. Thanks. Let's move to the next one then. Now that we have known, getting what is inside the HTML content within the element, and that's what we call in HTML, there are other ways of accessing nodes. So you can get element by tag name. For example, you can get paragraphs. So for example, when you say, okay, paragraphs, document.get element by tag name P, which we refer to accessing all the paragraph elements, right? And then the second one is get element by ID, which is we have already know. For example, in this particular case, based on ID, we could do something, right? So that is another way to accessing elements. Then we earlier discussed about creating classes, which is useful whenever you want to access it through several classes. We can say get element by class name. So any element by the class attribute, then you can actually use, right, with particular value. And then if you can use query select all. So this is used to retrieve nodes of DOM based on CSS style selector. Remember, in the CSS, we can talk about selectors. For example, if you want to access an element of a specific element, you can use document.query select selector all, and we can say sidebar paragraph, so that the class is sidebar and then the element is p paragraph. Then the second example, selecting an element based on an attribute. So we have a text input, document query select all. We say input and we will check the attribute type text, right? So query select all, which will return a node list. Then the next one is, right, we can retrieve value of an attribute attached to an element. Now, for example, when you say get, in this case, attribute, right? So in this example, you will see, we will create a variable called big image, and then we will get a lead image. And there, let's say I want to access the file name. Now, to access the file name, we use get attribute and we say src, which will give us the name of the graphic file. So these are like some of the ways that we could, access, right, what we call DOM nodes. Now that we have learned about accessing nodes, we should also learn how to manipulate them. That means now you can access any element in HTML and then you can change it. And how you're going to change, and here are the methods. Now, for example, first one we are going to look at is called set attribute. In set attribute, what happens, we will change the value of the attribute. Now, for example, earlier, let's say we have one file, and then next we can have another file, right? So with the button click, for example, you can change what you have right now, change it to another one. Now that is possible, right? So maybe we could, trying to do that. So let's see, we can do that by creating a simple exercise. So what I want you to do is create a simple page with an image and a button. When you click the button, I want you to replace that image with a different one. Shall we start? So what I'm going to do is I just want to access the element by ID, and then you change that. Right, let's start then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new one. Okay, maybe I will copy paste the beginning so that I don't have to type everything. Image switch. Right, within that, what I'm going to have is body. slash HTML. So let me save this. I'm going to save this as base program, let's say 3 HTML, and then let's double click on it. And this is what I have right now, right? Nothing is there. So let's have an image. So the right now, okay, let me check what images I have in my file. Do I have some images? Okay, I have very small set of images. Let me create 2 images. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a paint, right? And I'm going to create 2 images. The right now, right? I create an image 500 and 500. So let me put up a star. So okay, thanks, Sekani. I will check that. So let's put up some colors. Okay. And here is one image. Let me save it as PNG within, okay, folder images. I will say big star. Right. And then let me start from the beginning. Let's have a circle. Okay. And let's put up a different color. So let me save it as, okay, I will say big circle. So now I have created 2 files. Let me add an image. So I will say imgsrc. I will say big star dot png. Right, let me save it. It should be inside the images. Yes, we have. So let's make it some style. We have this. Let me put up a button as well. What I want you to think about is, yeah, you don't have to do with me. You can finish early and you share with me. So let's take a button. So body, I will put a slash here. Thanks for pointing down the error. So I will get switch. So let me save it. Let me refresh. Right now we have a switch here. Let's have some styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the button. Right. Let me put up some changes to the appearance of this. So we can have background color. Let me say light green. Right. Let's have some colors. So the text color, let me put white. So let me refresh. So we have background color. And then we say color, we have white. So let me check, we have style. Okay, the mistakes that I did is putting a dot, which is a class. Thanks for pointing out because we want to change this. Thanks. Yeah. So you can see, okay, there's a border. Let's remove the border as well. So I will say border is none. Now you can see it's no border. Let's add some padding. Let's say 15 pixels. Yes. Maybe you can give more left and right. So let's say 30 pixels. Okay. Right. Now, what we want to do is when you click it, let's make it a change, right? So when you click the button, let's say we want to switch it, right? So that's what we want to do. So that means let's write a script. Right. Now, you can decide what you want to do based on what we want to do in this particular case. So one thing that we want to do is when you click the button, let's say we want to execute particular function. So remember we said there are different ways you can do, but like what we did early, so simply we can use on click. So let's say on click, let's say, okay, switch pick. Let me have a function like that. And then let's try to write a function. So switch pick. So in this function, now what we want to do is, okay, now right now what we are trying to do is we are going to get, from the element name, and we are going to change, right, the src value, right? So that's what we are going to do here. So we'll get document dot get element by, if you're using id here, right, or you can use element. So, and then we will set the attribute this, and this is what we are trying to do. So in that particular case, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get, right, the element. So in this particular case, now I have to go inside the function, and then I have to say, okay, document dot. So right now what we have to do is, of course, we have document dot. Okay, right now we don't have an element in image. We didn't have put ID. So let me put an ID there. Let's say image. I put an image, and then I will say document dot get element by ID. Then I will say image, right? And then I can set attribute. And then we have to say src. The source we are going to change to big circle dot ph. Oh, okay. I think I have to share the screen. So the right now, okay, what we did. Right, let me refresh, let me save. Let me refresh, switch. Okay, okay, so I forgot here images. Let me refresh again. Okay, so here is what I have. So when I say switch, you can say it will change it to no big circle. Right, if you want to keep on switching this, now you know what you have to do. So for an image also, let me img Let me put width, let's say 100 pixels. Okay, right. Let me have a break here. Refresh for the beginning. Okay, it switched. Okay, now we manipulate the image by clicking the switch button. Now it will change the image. The technique that I have used is I get the element by image and then we set attribute src to a different image. That's what I did. So if you want to keep on switching right now, once you switch, you can't do. So simply you can have a if statement. So you can get the attribute. For example, now here, what happens is always this. So you can have a selection, for example. I can say if I can ask same thing. For example, I can have document dot get element by ID image. So now we will get an image. And then what we need to get is the get attribute src. If it is equal to, let's say, images dot big star dot png. So that means our first one. If that is the case, we can say that, okay, do this. What do you mean by do this? We change this, right? Or else we can make it to the other one, right? So what happens here? We have to say a big star. So let me see. Now let me run this. Switch. Okay, something wrong again. I just want to check. Okay, I'm checking the document. I'm getting the element ID by the image. Get source. If it is a, okay, start, okay, T is the problem. So let me refresh now. You know, it will switch in now. You can see what has happened. So simply I did this, you know, get the attribute and we set the attribute. Now, since this particular set of values are repeating, maybe I can create some variable var. I can say, for example, okay, my image, I will say, okay, I will get this part here. Document.get element by ID image. So by doing so now, instead of just typing everything, right? So what I did is I will say, okay, my image dot get attribute src. So same thing now you can replace here. You will have a complex, compact code. Like this. Right now that this is, I can put semicolons, refresh it. Yeah, it's now completely working. So simply what I did, if I repeat from the beginning, so I had two HTML commands I have used. So in this particular case, we have used simple image I have introduced with the button. And then when you on click, we have this simple function which actually check the values, because I already have two values, big star and big circle, and then it will switch between. Okay, as homework for today's session, a small work I would like you to know that you can actually create a simple picture slide where you will have a set of files. So what you can do is you can create a simple array which consists of set of image file names, and then you can have one or two buttons, and then you can keep on changing it. Right. If you have finished up to this point, explain again from what I did in this example. So we started creating an image and button. So we had a star, and then we have a button called switch. We have changed the button properties. We set the background color to light green and the text color to white, and we remove the border and we put up some padding. Image, we set up the width into 300. Now then the next one, what we did, we include the on click. Whenever somebody clicks the button, it'll execute the function switch pick. And within the function switch pick, what we did, we get the image. That means here, this one, using the ID, get element ID, we get the image, and that means this one. And we check whether the source attribute is equal to big star. If it is a big star, which is the star, it will move to big circle. If not, you switch back to big star. Now what happens when you click it? Right now we have a big star. It will move to big circle, again back to star, circle, and so on. So this is simply what you will notice in the pages where when you want to switch the pictures, you can manipulate the DOM, that means node in a HTML document using JavaScript. And that is exactly what I wanted to discuss. Okay, then let's move on to the final part for today. Right now, we discussed manipulating nodes and set attributes. Similarly, you can change the text and any markup inside the element. Now, for example, here, we will get the document element by a class name intro. And then whatever within this, we will change with the text. So that is possible. Then you can also change the style. So especially when you want to work with, right, the CSS styles, that also can be done. So for example, in the previous one, we had intro. If you get the element by ID intro, and then if you say color of this, you are setting the color, and then you can set the background color. So in that manner, you can actually change the CSS, right? The next one is you can also add or remove elements. So for example, when you're adding and removing, which is very interesting. For example, you can create new elements using the create element. Now, for example, here within the document, we create an element called div. So this is the creation. After that, you need to add it to the document. Right. The next one is create text node. You can enter text into an element. So we can use create text node method to add the text. And you can use append child method, whatever the node that you have newly created to the DOM. That means document object model. Now you can see that we have division, div element, and it's called our div. So that's what we have right now. And then you see in the JavaScript what we can do. We can say var our div. We can access this our div element by this method. And then we can create element paragraph. And then we will create a text node. And that text is appended to the copy. That means in the new paragraph. And that is appended to the division. So this is how you can gradually append the child. Basically, you add nodes to the DOM. Similarly, if you want to insert an element before another element, you can use insert before, right? Now, for example, in this example, we have a divide our div, and we have paragraph, we say paragraph. Now you see we accessing our div using get element ID, and we also accessing our paragraph. We are going to create a new element called H1, and we create a text for the H1, we add it up. And then if you want to insert before the paragraph, right, we can use our div dot insert before you add the paragraph. Next, we can use replace child. We can use to replace one node with another. And in this particular case, it will take, 2 arguments. So for example, here we have our div and swap me. We have our div, and then we have swap me. And we create a new image. And then we that set attribute to that src to this image. And then we are going to replace the swap me is a division right now. We will swap with the image. So you can manipulate existing one. So what you have seen is div is replaced by an image here. Likewise, we can also have remove child. So what we can do is you can remove a node or entire branch from the document using remove child. It's again very interesting. For example, we have two divs here, and within that we have paragraph. So we get parent div using parent. So we will get this. We will get remove me using remove me. And then we will say parent d dot remove child remove me. So within this we will remove. So what happened? It will remove this part. Right. I think with that, we will conclude the JavaScript part. I think we discussed very interesting ideas or very interesting operations that you can perform with JavaScript. And especially in today's session, we look at how we could use JavaScript for validation, as well as how to manipulate Chrome tree. And now I guess by understanding these basic methods, right? Now you can understand how people have actually used JavaScript in their designs. Of course, there are other parts that we could discuss. If the time permits, maybe we can have a look at it. Now, for example, there are what we call JavaScript libraries. We simplify, you know, writing JavaScript in plain. So there are many, JavaScript libraries can be used. Now, for example, jQuery is one of them. So most of the time when you use a library, you can say over 95% of the time, you might see a JavaScript frame like jQuery is used. And with that, not only that, if you use jQuery, for example, in jQuery, we have user interface library, which you can use, widgets, drag and drop functionality, everything is there. So I'm actually not planning to have jQuery, but if the time permits, maybe at the end, I would like to revisit. But I think mainly if you understand the basics of JavaScript, that would be enough for you to continue this. Okay, having said that, let me finish for today. If you do not have any questions, the comments, we'll stop here and we'll meet on next week.
Doctor, excuse me.
Yes, Prasanga.
Doctor, we have a small question that that doctor said earlier that we have given some assignment in group work.
Yes.
I think doctor said that doctor will be giving some that systems that we have to develop each group. So if we can post that one, I think it will be maybe helpful for our team and group members, all the batchmates.
Okay, yeah, that I will do within this week, because I thought we finished the first few. Since now we have completed the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I think you can start at least initial work. So yeah, so I will post the registration of the group. If I didn't check, I will check that one. So first one is we have to form the group, and then I will release the formal assignment this week, so that you can get an idea like what kind of system you are going to build. Remember that what you have to do is not a complete system. I don't think with the limited time you don't have time to do this. But this time, my plan is like, as a set of groups, we can try to build one or two application and make it the perfect. So let's see. I will prepare the documentation and share with you within this week.